All right. Good afternoon. Good morning. Thank you for joining. I wanted to just quickly kind of give you an idea about what we're going to discuss today. By title, you can tell we're going to talk a little bit about some of the content, some of the software that we have to help you scale your skills within the cloud. An important component of that is being able to actually customize and create context around the training that you're actually doing. So what I want to do is kind of right now give you by way of a quick introduction. My name is Mark Smith. I'm a solutions engineer with Cloud Academy. My role here is to work specifically with our customers as they make this journey into the cloud, wherever they're at, to kind of meet them there, get an idea of current states, figure out where they want to be when it comes to the future, and help you position the platform, some best practices and things like that to help you get where you want to be. With me, I've got my colleague, John Shell. He was going to be helping and lead this webinar. John, quick introduction.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. I am the assessment manager with Cloud Academy. As a part of the content team, I focus on our exams, our quizzes, our tests, and also do as I can to help out with other types of content as well. Really happy to join you. I've been a long-time user of Content Engine and happy here to show it off.
Thanks a lot, John. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, some more context around this, since we're going to be talking about Content Engine primarily and how you can use this to really create that true context around the training. We put context into everything we do. So I think it's equally important to create that same type of context as you move over into the cloud, begin your transformation journey. And again, no one uses these services in the cloud the same way. They're not all, the technology is not all going to stay the same. So we want to allow you the ability to be able to do that. In order to do that, it's important to kind of know exactly what we have kind of out of the box. So Cloud Academy is focused primarily on emerging technologies. So some of the areas that we cover, you'll see AWS, Azure, and GCP kind of leading the forefront. We've got a lot by way of DevOps, not just the tools that are available, but the methodology, helping you understand what it truly means to adopt a culture, a cloud-first culture, as well as implementing DevOps. So you'll see a lot of containerization in here. Additionally, we'll cover a lot of programming languages, some of the cybersecurity content we just released, CISSP as well. So these are some of the topics that you'll see as well. And then we really hit on some of these job roles, which are going to be critical to that transformation as well. So a lot for you to start with, and you'll start to see how this is really applicable and why this is important when it comes to actually, again, creating that customization and that context around it. So what does Content Engine actually offer? There's really three key areas that I want to talk about here, and John can certainly add in any color that he wants to as well, but we want to allow you the ability to be able to personalize this. So be able to take things, modules, resources that you have available, and actually put those into and migrate those into Content Engine. So you can actually use these when it comes to learning paths, things that we have available for you to be able to integrate your content and assign that out with people to train. So being able to take, whether it's a static file like a PowerPoint, a PDF, or actually embedding a video, MP4, whatever it may be on your static files, but actually being able to create some additional context, specific training around your resources, things that fit your business needs that are important when it comes to rolling that out to your employees, to start with some type of baseline on how things are being done in your organization. Additionally, we've got Modify here, being able to take our library. Again, I kind of mentioned and used this example before, but nobody uses these services the same, right? There may be some similarities from organization to organization. We want you to be able to get that granular in the labs, in the learning paths, in the exams, to actually truly be able to test, to be able to actually see that people are able to perform these lab functions in a safe sandbox environment prior to them being turned over into production. So you'll see some of this in and through the demo when John goes through it, into the ability to modify these labs, exams, and subsequently the learning paths as well. And then the last component of this is to publish it. So being able to actually publish this content, effectively launch it, be able to scale your program, and manage that across the board when it simultaneously. So when you need to update things, having the ability to go in, unpublish that content, update it, publish it back in again, and make it available very quickly. The tools that we have available to do that through Content Engine, you'll get an idea of how easily you can do that. But these are really the three main areas that we want to hit on when it comes to Content Engine, and things that will come to light as John shows you this in the demo just momentarily.
That's right. I'm going to be walking through several types of content on Content Engine. And as I'm showing you how to use it, I'm going to be calling out a few ways, a few different use cases for, different modifications that you can make and how these might apply to your needs. Back to you, Mark.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I forgot earlier, and thanks for putting it in the chat. But if you do have any questions as we go along, pop those into the chat box. We'll be happy to answer those at the end of the presentation here. Before we pop into the demo, I wanted to create some additional awareness of how the platform is actually organized. So we take three key areas, the first being measurement. By measurement, we want you to get an adequate understanding of where you're at. So really getting a baseline on any specific technology, skill set, whatever it may be. We do assessments by way of text-based exam assessments, as well as some of the lab-based assessments where someone, can spin up an EC2 instance effectively and do all the steps that they need. They can be assessed on that as well. But again, gives you a very good baseline to know where you're at, where you're starting from. So subsequently, you can know how to match that up to where you're going, what skills exist is a good thing to know, but more importantly, the skill gaps so you can be able to attack those. That skill assessment will filter into a skill profile, which is a real-time visualization of the skills that they're acquiring over time. I'll show you that at the end part of the demo, but these are fed by those initial assessments as well as additional quizzes and exams and the practical application in and through the labs that they go and do. The next step is the prescription and practice, where we take these learning paths. You'll see kind of what this looks like on the back end with Content Engine, but once you've developed these learning paths, you assign those out through training plans, but these are guided experiences with the courses, the quizzes, the labs, and the exams. So this gives you a good, real mix of that learn, do, and validate model throughout. It's very guided and prescriptive along the way. Hands-on labs being a very key component of that, so you can make sure people are adequately being able to perform, not just do well on a test, but actually be able to go and perform the functions that are going to be relevant to them in their job. On this right-hand side, the customization and control is indeed where we're spending most of our time today. Just very quickly on the top end, or the training plans where you assign those out. I'll actually take over part of the demo after John goes through and does some of his, where I'll assign that customized training plan out. And that's essentially where people are tracking against a due date to get that done. So you assign it out, and it increases the likelihood that the training will actually get done, because there's something holding them accountable to that, which has been missing kind of in the digital training world. Content Engine, which we're going to talk about today, I talked a little bit about that, but effectively being able to create context around your stack and mirror that in the training you're doing. It's a completely unique tool to Cloud Academy, and one that is really exciting, something that I've seen a need for a long time, and glad that we're able to solve for that. And then lastly, Control Center, where you can actually create teams, manage who can see that content, sign it out, but also the analytics, the reporting, and traditional kind of integration APIs, SSO, and LMS connectors that are available with any large-scale software rollout that you would see. So not to waste any more time, what I'm going to do is go over, and I'm going to pass the baton here to John to kind of start off with the demo and Content Engine so everybody can see how this actually works. So John, take it away.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, everyone. So today, I'm going to be demonstrating how to use Content Engine to create and tailor a training program. Here we are in Content Engine on the dashboard. We're going to start by creating a learning path, and a learning path, as we said, is a group of courses, labs, and exams that are laid out in specific steps for you. So let's go ahead and start with creating a learning path. I'm going to start by clicking this Create button. And as you can see, you have two general options when creating a learning path. You can create a learning path from scratch, and this essentially means that you are selecting all of the assets individually and deciding on the order for yourself. We also now can clone an existing learning path, and this allows you to basically start with a published Cloud Academy learning path and then modify it to fit your needs. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to select AWS Security Services. And as you can see, it's loaded now, and by cloning the learning path, it provides all of these fields pre-populated for you. You have the title, which I will just make a quick modification to here. You have the library description, you have all of the information here provided for you, which you can edit. But since we're focusing on content primarily, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the content page that focuses on content selection. And here you can see all of the courses, labs, and exams that are included in the learning path. You can see we have this learning path features several resources on IAM. We have KMS encryption, Cloud HSM, CloudTrail, Amazon Inspector. So this is a pretty simple layout. It's fairly intuitive in terms of making modifications to a learning path. At this level, you're really just looking at the assets that we have here and deciding which ones do or do not fit your needs. And you may want to add, or you may want to remove some for the sake of time, keeping the training as time sensitive as possible. So just as an example, I'm going to modify a few things here. First, I'm going to say, let's say as an example that guard duty does not fit within our current technology stack. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the guard duty course and the guard duty lab. It's as simple as that. And in terms of adding a step, it's equally intuitive. You open up this add steps menu, and then you can see you have our list of labs, exams, courses, and resources. Now I'm going to go ahead and add a course. You can search through these courses with the search field here. I'm going to select a couple of resources from our CISSP learning path that focus on asset security. And just go ahead and line those up. As a general rule, you want to have the exam be the final piece of the learning path. And it's really that simple. Now, that is essentially how you modify a learning path in terms of adding and removing resources. Speaking of resources, I'm going to go ahead and move on to that type of content next. I'm going to leave our learning path open so I can add resources as we go. Now, resources are essentially a way that makes it possible for you to add your own training materials to the learning path. These could be PDFs, these could be Word documents, these could be spreadsheets, or even videos. And it's essentially a very efficient way to add training materials specific to your needs without heavy lifting in terms of recreating them or reformatting them. If you have detailed compliance or best practice documentation, for example, you already have this completed, why remake it? It's not necessary. You can add it here as it is. To demonstrate, I'm simply going to add a PDF, a sample AWS white paper. So let's go ahead and add this in. You can select how long you would like to require people to review the resource. I'll go ahead and just say 30 minutes. Select an image and upload the file here. And there it is. Now you can review the resource before to make sure that it's formatted properly and everything before you move forward. There's a couple of additional fields. It doesn't pre-populate here. And last of all, I'm going to just add a skill objective for security operations. And there you have it. Now this is all you need to do in terms of adding a resource to Content Engine. I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And right from here, I can click Publish. And you'll see how quick this is in terms of adding this to the learning path. You can see it's there already. Go ahead and add that to the learning path. Now, the learning path and resources are fairly intuitive. I'm going to move forward into showing you how to customize labs. Labs are a more involved process, but it's still fairly intuitive. So here we are. I'm going to go ahead and click Create. Now you see this tab asks you if you want to create an AWS lab, a Microsoft Azure lab, or a Google Cloud lab. I'm going to go ahead and select AWS. And you can see here a familiar menu. You have the ability to add from scratch or to clone an existing lab. Adding from scratch is a little bit different for a lab. Essentially, you see this menu of lab steps here on the left side of the screen. Now, these are all of the steps available that you can select from, and the lab creation process is fairly simple. You simply just move a lab step from the selection here to the main menu here, and there are a couple of guiding principles when you are creating a lab. The first is that you have to remember you're creating a fixed lab environment. So you want to be sure that your lab has a logical flow in terms of using interrelated services. It's not possible to create a lab environment that essentially uses all the services within AWS within the same lab. And at the same time, you want to make sure that your lab starts logically and moves in a logical order. So, for example, the first step to an AWS lab is usually logging into the AWS console. But that's just an example, and I'm going to move on from starting a lab from scratch to showing you how you can clone an existing lab. I have one in mind here from our AWS Security Services Learning Path. Okay. So we've taken this lab on key management services, and you can see it, again, it pre-populates all of the fields, and you have all the steps here laid out in the correct order. Now, how can you modify this? Well, there's essentially three options that you have. The first is to select steps that are pre-configured, that are available here. You can select steps and simply add these to the steps that are already included within the lab. You can also edit existing steps. I'll show you more about that in a second. Or you can create a custom step. So let me walk through those each of those in a bit more detail. Using a pre-configured step, as we said, you just want to make sure that you're staying within the scope of the overall lab. So let's go ahead and see what we might have on EBS. I know that's one of the services included here. So I'm going to go ahead and just select the step on cloning an EBS volume, drop that into our lab, and you can see it falls within a natural order after we've created an encrypted EBS volume. Now, moving on, if you wanted to modify any of the lab steps, you can edit them by clicking on this pencil icon here. This opens up the lab step, and you can see it has the introduction, it has the various steps included, as well as screenshot images. And it's possible for you to edit the text or images, add text and add images as you please. I'll just give you an example here. Okay. And you see I can delete an image very easily. Go ahead and just undo that. And I want to show you one additional feature. If we save this as a new step with our customizations, you can see the lab step is successfully created. Go ahead and close this. And you see this, this new description here, custom, on the lab step that we modified. Now, what this does is it adds a custom step to your specific library. This is the library that is available to your account only. And it is available for you to use. It is now saved, and it is available to anyone else who may be creating labs within your account. And I should mention some general use cases here for customization. Let's say, I'll go ahead and reopen this. Let's say that you have best practices or certain compliance requirements in terms of how your customer master keys are encrypted. Well, rather than having that training added as a separate resource, you can include the relevant material here to make sure that people who are completing this lab are not only familiarizing themselves with the service, but they are also getting familiar and developing mastery over the specific requirements that you have. So that's a valuable customization, and it's very simple. It wouldn't take a lot of work to copy and paste the overall best practices into the lab step here as notes to make sure that anyone who's training would be well aware of them. All right. And last but not least, I'm going to go ahead and open up what we call a custom step. Now this is, as you can see, an entirely blank slate. And that might seem a bit intimidating to some of you, but there is a very specific use case where this is certainly a big advantage. And that is, let's say you have previous training materials, previous labs that you might not even have a platform for, or that platform might be outdated. But it would be very advantageous to include that training here within Cloud Academy, rather than having someone that you are onboarding, for instance, going through a separate process outside of this system where they aren't being assessed and doing that training separately. So what you can do is you can integrate those separate labs into Content Engine. You can simply add the text and the photos here and save it within Content Engine so that you can use it and reuse it as a custom step, as I showed you earlier. Now, those are the three basic ways that you can modify Cloud Academy Labs within Content Engine. I'm going to go ahead and move on to exams.
John, one thing I would mention too on the labs is that you can actually add skill sets with these as well. So it could be hitting on a skill that's already marked in Cloud Academy, and keep in mind that the actual labs are feeding into skill profiles. I'll show you momentarily what that looks like, but you can, if you had a particular custom skill or something specific to your environment that you wanted to notate in that lab, and then subsequently have someone, validate that, you could add that by way of skill profiles, put that custom skill in there. Subsequently, it would feed, into their profile once the exams or the lab is completed. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, thanks, Mark. It's a good point. So here we have our exam screen within Content Engine. Going to go ahead and click Create once again. And you can see the process is pretty similar whether you're creating learning paths, labs, resources, or exams. And we have the same similar options, creating from scratch or cloning an existing lab. Essentially, the same process holds true here. Building it from scratch, you would use your own questions or perhaps questions that we have in our library. Our question library includes all of the separate products that are covered on Cloud Academy, but and you have access to them. I believe there's over 15,000 questions at this point. But it may still be more efficient to create a lab from scratch. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. To clone an existing lab. And as you can see, selected a lab, and once again, all of the information is available here. And now here you can see the skill objectives that Mark was mentioning just a moment ago. You can see this exam has several selected related skills. I want to just give you an idea of how large our library is. I believe we have over 500 skills within the current skill library, but for security, you can see just the variety here to give you an idea. Now, if you do need to create a custom skill, it's very simple. You can simply click this link to get started, and then our customer support will follow up with you right away to carry on with next steps and getting that started and added for you. Moving on, we have some key exam features I want to make sure I cover. You can see here is the exam duration. That's the exam is timed, and so right now it's set for 40 minutes. You can adjust this as you see. If you'd like to add a little bit more pressure, you can reduce it to any time that you see fit. Right now it defaults to 40 minutes, and that varies from exam to exam. You have the number of questions at 25. You can adjust this, of course, if you'd like to make the exams a little bit longer, or you'd like to perhaps reduce the time that people need to spend. You can do that here. We also have the minimum score set at 60%. Now you can adjust this as well, and I just want to give you an idea of the capabilities you have. If you wanted this to be a simple skill evaluation and less of an exam, and set it so that anyone who takes the exam will pass, but will get feedback on their overall performance and see where their skill gaps are, you can set the score to 0, and that's exactly what you'll get. Everyone will pass the exam. They will not need to retake it, but you will be able to identify skill gaps based on the feedback and the skill profiles. At the other end of the spectrum, you can set this to 100% and require complete mastery and correctness on the answers. We don't do that. Our default is 60%. Now, in terms of advanced settings, just to give you an idea of how we create this exam, it's split into 5 separate topics that we want to make sure have equal focus within the exam. So data management, networking, website hosting, as you can see here, designing for failure. Each of these is 20% of the exam. So there's 5 questions on each of these areas. Now, as I said before, you can adjust this if you'd like to focus on one area more so than another. Another interesting feature is you can, right now we have a minimum score of 0 for each area, but let's say that networking is a critical component of the role that you're onboarding for with this exam. If you wanted someone to make sure that they get every question correct for this particular area alone, you could set this to 100%. Now, this doesn't change the total required score that they need here. It just requires that they answer every networking question correctly in order to pass the exam. And finally, I know we've got a lot of components here related to scoring. You have our scoring system, which has easy, medium, and hard. This basically decides whether you want to penalize someone for wrong answers. And the default is to not penalize. You can select medium, which has a slight penalty, and hard, which has a more severe penalty. But let's move on. I want to show you an interesting feature here. Let's say that designing for failure is not a key area of your concern. Instead, you'd like to test on cryptography, and you want to make this an equal part of the exam. You can do that very simply. I'm going to go ahead and move on here to our selected questions. What's that? Did I? That last percentage. Okay. Go ahead and hit next. Okay, now you can see all of the topic areas here, and this, by selecting them, you can see the questions selected for each area. You can see the numbers here and what they mean. The number on the left means there are 18 questions available that can be selected for this exam, but the exam will select 5 at a time. So there are 18 for this area, 13 for website hosting, 28 for networking, and 7 for data management. But we need to add some questions for cryptography, our new area for this exam. So I've gone ahead and clicked on the search field to add more questions from our library. I'm going to go ahead and select our cryptography skill objective. Okay. Apply that. And you can see the questions come up here on the left side. Now, just like with lab steps, I have the topic area selected here. There are no questions. I can go ahead and drag them in here. Or I can go ahead and add all 25 if I'm happy with that. And go ahead and click Save. And there you have it. I'm going to publish this. And there we are. All right. Well, that is pretty much it. We have covered quite a bit here in terms of learning paths, resources, labs, and exams, and shown how you can customize each of those types of content in Content Engine. I'm going to go ahead and save this learning path. Okay. I'm going to publish this. And now this is available to all of the users within this particular account. So that is it for me. Mark, back to you.
Thanks a lot, John. Yeah, I think it's great, just kind of putting on, my kind of user hat here, and just to make sure, can you see the Content Engine screen here still? Just, I think you can. So I just want to, talking about okay, good. Thanks, John. Just talking about a little bit about this cloning feature. So initially that started out where you could just clone learning paths, which John showed you at the beginning. We work with a lot of customers who they're using this at various stages, right? So as you're, kind of getting into the cloud, starting to migrate some legacy applications over, starting to adopt some of the cloud first culture, this may not be as prominent in the way that you're doing things, but we've seen people mature in their cloud adoption, and this quickly becomes a tool that is highly valuable to them. So the ability to use this cloning feature, where I use it in context of like if somebody writes up a document or a blog post, I'm a lot better at editing those than I am at like starting one from scratch. And that's the same type of concept. So being able to take all the areas that we have, whether it's the individual questions that make up the exam, and then being able to clone that exam and pull in from your own questions, create context around it. We just had a company that wanted to create exams, but they wanted to put their own, they're not necessarily interested in just the certification. They want to create some context on making sure that their users understand the way these services are being used in their environment. So they pulled from some of the AWS certification exam questions, some of the Azure certification questions for 300, and then subsequently some of their own, and create just a hodgepodge of questions that can go in. It's really, really cool to see, and that cloning feature has certainly been something that organizations have taken advantage of. So John, thanks a lot for that. What I want to do now is kind of finish this and wrap up with where you would actually take this custom content you created, put it into a training plan, and actually assign that out. So if I go in here now into training plans, I'll be able to create one. I can actually do this from scratch. So I'll call this demo AWS security services. And we'll just put demo in here, and I'll go to add my step. And there's the demo AWS learning path that John created. So now this is available. I'll save this. It goes into a draft status, and once I publish it, it's available. So now this is going to be a training plan, and what happens is I'll pop back out into my management console here. So as an administrator, these are all tools that you'll have the ability to go in and take a look at. If you missed the webinar from September 4th, we covered a great deal of this in there. So a lot of what you saw in that initial slide was all covered. We're just picking up on using some of these tools now in true context when it comes to Content Engine. So back to training plans, and let's just say that I want to go and assign out that custom training plan we created to one of my teams. I'd simply go in here to add a training plan cycle, and then I'd be able to pick that from the list of the training plans that I wanted to put in here. So I'll assign that to a team. I'll pick the team that I want to actually assign it to. If I wanted my managers to take that training, I could do it. And then ultimately I can pick an amount of time per week that I want them to actually train. So as the team manager, how much time your people have to train. So you can use this by way of, I need to have this done, by a certain date to meet this milestone, that we have to have the people trained up to be able to contribute into this project, whatever it may be. You could subsequently use the slider bar here, or if you needed to have this training done by end of December to be able to start fresh on that project when you come back from the holiday break, you can actually come down here and select the date, add a training plan objective to tell them exactly what you expect them to be able to do with this custom training plan you created, and subsequently they can go and enable nudges where it keeps them on track. Again, these are the parts of the platform where now you're actually taking these things. It's great that you created and made it available, but you want to be able to hold people accountable to actually go in and do it. End users really appreciate that because it becomes top of mind for them at the point. It's difficult when we kind of get in the mix of our jobs and things that are going on. Training can sometimes take a little bit of a backseat, so this is a great way to keep them on task. They'll get weekly reminders every week and able to go and do that, and the manager will get weekly emails as well. What happens now, so you fast forward and they've been on this training plan for a while, and it starts feeding into the skill profile. So I can actually look at the team level. So if I came into and wanted to switch to just my team that I assigned it to, I can actually do that as well. I'm going to keep it at this overall look at first. So I can come in here now and see at this overall level, this is everything on the Cloud Academy platform. What we want to do is start to drill down in those skills that were actually tagged within the labs and the exams of that training plan to see how well our people are growing in those areas. So again, overall, this is everything on the Cloud Academy platform. I can see those top users in those areas, but I want to drill down into AWS security. So I'll start with AWS, click on that platform. You see it pulls up everything that's available here, all the different platform domains. Again, I could see top users by way of how proficient these individuals are with their overall understanding of AWS and all of its services and domains. I can look at individual teams over here as well, but again, I'm drilling down to security. So I click here, and now I can actually go and look in that specific domain, all the services that were configured in that actual training plan that we assigned out, and specifically see the skills that we're acquiring over time. This is going to do a couple of things for me. One, it's going to ensure we're on the right path. I can see how well our skills are progressing over time that are going to be critical in that milestone that we're setting forth, and be able to report back to my superiors and let them know, hey, we're on par with where we need to be, or we're actually exceeding in the skill jumps that we've seen. And you could take different, this could obviously be where that training plan was rolled in, and you can see how the skills start going up from there. I can also use this to see who those people are who are excelling in those areas. So if I want to put Joanne, Alicia and Jim and have them lead a project team, this is a great way for me to go back and take a look at that and be able to make sure and ensure that that we have the right people in place to lead these projects to meet the deadlines that we have. Because I know I've heard it firsthand from some of our customers, meeting those deadlines, not meeting those milestones that you've set forth can be a very painful process, and one that is not a fun conversation to have when people are knocking at your door and asking where these things are at. We have seen a tremendous amount of success in organizations that have worked with us to be able to take and implement the tools in this platform to subsequently skill their people up to be contributing to those goals and milestones as you move forward. So if you use everything all together, and again, I encourage you, if you missed the September 4th, to go back and listen to the recording of that where I walk through a lot of these in conjunction with my colleague Andy Larkin and Ryan Newell by way of customer success. It's a great piece on kind of how to take all this together. Content Engine is that one piece where it may not be at the forefront or at the top of mind for you at the very beginning, but very quickly, without creating context around the way that you're training and what's important to your organization, can very quickly become a pain point and something that you don't necessarily account for right up front. So it's one of those things where it's included with the subscription to the Cloud Academy platform. And something that you may use sparingly at the beginning, but we have seen customers as they mature and grow, accompanied with all these other tools to assign it out. Content Engine becomes a major tool and a factor into making sure that they're kind of staying ahead of the curve with the industry, their competitors, again, staying relevant as these tools and services continually change. We're going to be able to give you a little bit of your day back. I do want to pop out now and actually go into the Q&A portion. That's all that we wanted to show you by way of the demo. So we had a few questions that come in. Just give me 1 second, and I will be able to kind of read some of these out. And John, maybe you and I can split some of these up here. So first question, and this will be a good one for you, John, is can we edit courses? So when John was showing you this part of Content Engine, and we didn't go into the learning path altogether, but you did see some of those, what it looks like on the back end. The courses, the labs, the exams all make up a learning path. And so we're talking specifically about courses. It says, can we edit the courses in Content Engine?
At this point, you cannot edit courses in Content Engine. You can add courses from the library to a learning path that you want to include. but you cannot edit the existing courses. You can, however, add your own videos and include them on the learning path as resources. So that is one advantage that Content Engine does offer.
Yeah, and that's a really good that's a good question. I mean, the courses when you take a look at the platform are made up of multiple modules. So you may see in some of those instances where maybe some modules may be a little more relevant than others. The vast majority of that course, if you're really focused on that area, I think all of it will become applicable. But being able to create that context with your own videos, I think will be an important factor in kind of in adding any context to that you want to. So thanks for that. The second question that we have is, if my company uses Content Engine, can any member publish something in it? John, you want to take that one, and I can maybe add a little context as well.
Sure. So right now, anyone can create content on Content Engine in terms of writing a question or creating a lab or adding a resource. But in terms of publishing that resource, only account administrators can publish a resource so that what has been added to Content Engine is actually appearing on Cloud Academy for users within the account.
Yeah, this is another good one, and I want to add just a little context to that. John answered it perfectly. We created Cloud Academy was initially created for the end user. It started off with some test taking, people being able to go and prepare for certifications, and gradually ramped up into a really holistic end user type platform to go and get the tested questions, get the courses, the labs, and made a pivot to the enterprise. About 2 years ago now. And the cool thing about that is with all these enterprise features that you'll see and through Content Engine today and some that were on the September 4th webinar, you saw training plans, skill profiles. These are all kind of cutting edge, tools that are available to help you manage that experience. But the important thing to note is that it wasn't done at the expense of the end user. So we do want to allow end users to be able to add things to Content Engine. Why is that beneficial? Because it takes some of that burden off of just your admins and team managers from having to do it. And you can actually empower some of the members on your team to go in and create really legitimate content, highly customized labs that are going to benefit not just them. It's going to make them feel good to be able to go in and do that, but it's going to help train up your teams as well. We do want to be able to create some, we have the robust access control list there available. That's why we put in protections where only an admin can publish that. Just so you don't have individual members going in and creating content that you've not had a chance to put some eyes on and put some quality assurance on to make sure. And the last question, I'll take this one. It says, is there support or training available to utilize this tool? It's another great question, and we do actually on all the tools that we have available. We will train you on how to use these, from skill profiles and what does it mean when somebody's at a beginner level and intermediate advanced. We've got some guidance documents to walk you through that. There's training available on Content Engine. It is a very robust tool. We're very agile in the way that we work with our customers, so you can pull in and have really tailored questions on how to customize these labs. We can pull in some of our experts, like John is one of our experts on working and creating these exams. He mentioned the over 15,000 questions. I don't know how many he's responsible for, but it's a really good deal of them. So John is an absolute resource when it comes to using Content Engine to really create highly contextualized questions and exams and get the most out of those for your skills, and subsequently people from our lab team, which we frequently do. That's all part of the partnership that we have with you. When you sign up with Cloud Academy, you'll be assigned a customer success manager, which again was another part of the webinar from the September 4th where Ryan talked about that. And that training on Content Engine is part of the rollout. We want to make sure that you're very equipped to be able to use it, empowered to use it, and we'll certainly be there to provide the support and help out when needed. So that's a great question, and one that we would definitely work with you to make sure you had all the requisite skills necessary to be able to effectively kind of manage this along the way. And if I'm not mistaken, that wraps up the questions that we had available. So like I said, we'll give you a little bit of your day back here, about 15 minutes. That concludes everything that we wanted to show you. The recording of the webinar, I know some people signed up and weren't able to join. They'll have a recording of this. It'll be available to you and sent out through email. Probably, it will likely be tomorrow. If you have any questions on some of the things that you've seen today and want to reach out and have a further conversation on that, if you're already a customer, you can contact whoever your customer support or customer success manager is, or the sales rep. Or if you're not and you just want to get some more information, feel free to email the address that you see up there. We'll be happy to have a conversation, really create some context around your organization and how you could use these tools as well. We will be at Microsoft Ignite. We'll be at AWS reInvent. If you're out there, please feel free to stop by, grab a t-shirt or whatever other swag we have. We'd love to meet you. And with that, that'll conclude everything. John, I appreciate you joining me today. Had a lot of fun working on this with you. And we, again, very much appreciate you joining us and hope to see you real soon. Everyone, take care. Have a great day.